the founder of the Jewish Institute for Liberal Values. This is the Jewish Contrarians podcast. Once again, my usual co-host, Brandy Shafetinsky, is not with us this week, but I'm very delighted to have a special guest, Chuong Nguyen, who is a student in Budapest, Hungary, and a podcaster and a budding public intellectual, somebody I've gotten to know and been on his podcast several times and been astounded by his perspectives on issues in the Jewish world, in the United States. This is a young man who reads, journals like Tablet and Sapir, and who has an in-depth knowledge of the sort of discourse that we're most familiar with. And so, Chuong, I really appreciate you being on, and thanks for being, the keen observer you are.
It's a great honor, David. We've switched roles this time. You've been a guest on my podcast for several times, and now I get to be the guest. So
yeah,
it's great.
So you're from Vietnam.
Yes,
Hanoi. You went to study undergraduate in Canada. You got a degree in Canada, and you're now a graduate student in Budapest studying American studies. Did I get that right?
Yes.
You started this podcast, the Unlicensed Philosophy Podcast. We'll put the link up, and Dan we'll put it in the show notes. And you're really quite a keen observer to the American scene, but also you seem to have very high level access. I mean, you've talked to people on this podcast, that I think a lot of really well established podcasts would be happy to have on their show. Like, tell me, how do you go about doing that? Tell us about some of your guests and how you're able to get them to come on your show.
Well, you've been a great guest on this program. I suppose some of the names that are recognizable to listeners of this show may include Noam Chomsky and Michael Walzer, and I believe Leon Wieseltier of Liberty's Journal. He joined the show once, just to name a few. I guess my way of going about inviting them is I find their emails and I send them an email. I state the purpose of my invitation and the topics that we may potentially discuss. And they said yes, and we set up a time, and on we go for about an hour. That's how most of my episodes often go.
Yeah, you just ask. Well, you've I was impressed from the very first time with you. So here you are, observing what's going on in the United States from your perch in Hungary. You're watching these protests. You're studying about America, and you have a keen insight into it. How do you understand the current protests at Columbia University and other universities around the United States?
Well, so just to summarize, Unlicensed Philosophy, it's a series of conversations where I discuss with various guests, of course yourself included, in regards to issues of politics and history and philosophy. When I look at politics in the American scene, I would bring in the elements of philosophy and history to it. And as I mentioned before we start this program, the protests in Colombia are, to me, can be comparable to that of 1968. Very much similar things have happened. I believe Hamilton Hall was also being occupied in 68 as it was in 2024. And both protests concern a conflict outside of American soil. 1968, America was stuck in Vietnam, and in 2024, anger was directed at American support for Israel, as well as the current Israel-Hamas war. But I've also noted that as someone who's from Vietnam, I find that the protests of 68, as well as much of the Vietnam War protests by radicals at that time, they show well, they obviously show a degree of radicalism in their political ideology, but they also show a lack of knowledge as to the historical context of the region which they are advocating for. So ideas like decolonization or many sort of liberations of say blacks and women and all that sort, they were alien to the Vietnamese context in 1968. And similarly, anti-racism and wokeism and critical race ideas are alien to the Israeli-Palestine conflict.
Right, and yet people are applying them because they're descriptors and theoretical lenses through which to look at American society, and they're applying them in ways that they shouldn't into conflicts abroad. And they're a problem domestically, but they're even a bigger problem when you take something like you know, the oppressor binary and you apply it around the world in ways that are completely at odds with the reality on the ground.
Yes, of course. And imperialism and colonialism are labels often applied to both America and Israel during these protests. And yeah, I know that Vietnam has been a colony of various imperial regimes historically. And if imperialism and colonialism means the imposition of will from one foreign power to another, then the students who are protesting these conflicts, both in 68 and in 2024, are in a sense imposing their Western inspired ideas into non-Western soil.
So we should decolonize the decolonizers.
Yes, why not?
Right. Let me, out of curiosity, you come from a country that has been a victim of colonization. How do you understand the legacy of colonialism?
It is complex and it is multifaceted. And it is very popular these days to attribute the entirety of colonialism as something negative. Right? One of my guests on this show is a great theologian and scholar named Professor Nigel Bigger. He wrote an incredible book assessing the ethical dimensions as well as the lasting legacies of British colonialism. And he finds that overall, the ethical dimensions were justifiable and the effects, the good effects of, on balance, outweigh the bad. And I think that is the view that I'm currently staying on in regards to colonialism as a whole. There were obviously exploitation and injustice, and of course racism being applied in every colonial endeavor. But at the same time, modernity was spread throughout the world, as well as ideas of democracy and equality and human rights. Now, one should point to a historical example of the Haitian slave Toussaint Louverture when he revolted against the French Empire and established the independence of Haiti. Now, he used the French national anthem, La Marseillaise, as his battle cry, so to speak. And it just strikes me to what extent are the same ideas that motivates the decolonizers are taken from the context of the West, so the colonizing, as they say.
Right, you can't escape it. So I'm going to switch gears here for a second. You are studying in Budapest, Hungary. It is a place where you have sort of admirers of the sort of the nationalistic right in America who think that this is a model for a post-liberal American society. What is your take on Hungary? And obviously, there's a lot of people within this sort of pro-democracy movement who are highly critical of what's happening in Hungary. What is your take? You're living there. How do you understand it?
Well, of course, yeah, because I haven't lived here for too long. I think you know, I think if you ask me the same question in a few years, I may give a different answer than I give now.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
from my experience living here and also knowing a few American visitors, including one Roger, who
Hmm.
it's a well-known American author, I could see that those who are of the post-liberal slash national conservative bent, they
Hmm.
see Hungary as a different model of conservatism than the traditional model proposed by, say, William F. Buckley Jr. Now, the conservatism of Hungary is one that is very much anchored by the nation state and the Christian religion, whereas from my study, the Anglo-American conservatism um, is is very much grounded in natural rights and I suppose the free market and relations between men based on liberty. So
Hmm.
we have two different, I suppose, languages too, and they exhibit what kind of priorities that each strand of conservatism prefers. Now, it doesn't mean that does not mean that what it's the kind of conservatism that Hungary is operating doesn't work for Hungary, and the kind of conservatism that America is working doesn't work for America. But let's just say that whatever is working for Hungary is not guaranteed to work in America, and whatever is working in America, conservatism wise, is not guaranteed to work in Hungary.
Yeah. So you're a graduate student at a university in Hungary. Are you seeing some of the same left-wing ideological trends there than we're seeing on U.S. college campuses?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah,
Is that
all the
right?
time. Really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how about the larger society, though? Do you find it to be? Is there a vibrant left? Is there a quote unquote woke movement in Hungary?
I would say so, but you have to seek to find it. They do not come to you, the same pervasive way as I suppose in the American West Coast do.
Mhm. How do you find the intellectual environment generally there? Is it open intellectually?
Um, in some ways, yeah. And I should bring you this. I should bring you this topic of yesterday I yesterday I gave a presentation on immigration and multiculturalism. So that's the name of the class, and I picked Israel as a case study. And the entirety of my MA class group walk out as soon as I start.
Oh,
So,
that's great. How did you feel about that?
well, a bit disappointed, so to speak. I expected like three or four to walk out, but the entire class. That was unexpected for sure.
Wow, wow. I wrote a memo that we just put on the Jewish Institute for Liberal Values website on immigration and American values. Dan, I don't know if you can find that and post a link to it. This was written in 2021, March 2021, and I talked about a lot of what you might consider, critical social justice trends that were emerging 23 years ago, and how that was likely to affect the acculturation of immigrants into the United States. So I'm going to share that with you too,
Wow.
Chung. I thought that Americans traditionally, new Americans, were acculturated into sort of American dream, and increasingly were being acculturated into a more hostile version of American society, a society that no longer had a strong sense of itself, and were being and might end up as a result of that in a sort of downward spiral. Anyway, but I think the most notable aspect of it, if I may say so, was actually sort of talking about how I thought that there were real dangers lurking in this discourse that was emerging around us. And I described them almost exactly as you would today. Like that there are people who are characterizing American society as systemically racist and white supremacist. I mean, almost exact same terminology that I was just hearing for the first time. So it's an interesting topic. I know I kind of want to know more about what happened in this class. Did your professor say anything?
She stayed for the entirety of the presentation, and she approved of it. So I guess that's a good sign.
Uh-huh. Why do you think that they all left? Do you think was it coordinated? Was there some ringleader?
If there is a ringleader, I don't know who that is, but I'm sure there's some coordination being played in it. I think the topic was known in advance for a few weeks, and I suppose the name Israel sort of thrown them off.
Right. All right. So I want to, yeah. And so you think a lot of the students and grad students at your university are hostile to Israel?
Oh yeah, they make their views quite clear. I have two Arab students within my class group, and they make their views on Israel quite explicitly.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So whenever I've talked to you, you frequently quote essays from the kind of publications that I read, like Tablet Magazine and Sapir Journal, and you seem to know a tremendous amount about sort of this discourse in the American Jewish community. How did you end up studying that? And what do you read, and how do you have so much insight into these issues?
It's yeah, I first started reading I guess Jewish and Jewish leaning publication when I
Mm-hmm.
first tried to find out what the term neoconservative means. I know
Mm-hmm.
that because of Bush and the Iraq War, that term has been beaten like a dead horse. I think it has been that case, and because of this, I entered a quite fascinating intellectual / literary world that consisted of names like Irving Kristol and Norman Podhoretz and Daniel Patrick Moynihan, amongst others.
Mm-hmm.
And the first distinctively Jewish publication that I read is Commentary, and
Mm-hmm.
followed by the Public Interest. So Podhoretz and Kristol were the respective editors,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, from that I come to know publications like Tablet and Sapir, mostly because of the author Brett Stevens. He
Mm-hmm.
wrote for the Times, but he also contributed to Tablet, and he's the current editor in chief of Sapir, if I believe it correctly. I know that Sapir is a new journal, and
Mm-hmm.
I find almost all of the articles that I've read in it so far fascinating. And I've made the effort to invite authors of articles published in these sites to my podcast, and some of them have answered to my eternal gratitude for them.
Excellent. So, do you consider yourself a neocon now, or how do you think of yourself in that way?
If neoconservatism meant what it means in, say, the 1970s, where it means to criticize the excesses of the left and the right and an unabashedly pro-American worldview, then sure, I'm a neoconservative. But if it means a heightened sense of American exceptionalism and rather too zealous ambition to spread free government abroad, then that is I must confess some hesitancy to that.
Yeah, let's actually spend some time there. I was around a group of very smart people talking about the Jewish predicament now and anti-Semitism, and we were discussing what to do about it and the like. And one person pointed out, maybe what we really need to do is fight for a renewed sense of American exceptionalism. And now that doesn't mean in the nativist xenophobic sense, but the idea that the reason why Jews were so safe in America for so long, and why America was viewed as the land of opportunity despite its shortcomings, was this sense of exceptionalism, really, and that it was exceptional for the Jewish condition, but it was also exceptional in the sense that that it projected its values in a very proud, open way, and that it set the tone for much of the free world. What do you think of that? Do you have a sense of that? Do you think we should return to some notion of American exceptionalism, despite your concerns and misgivings?
I suppose if there is a renewed sense of American exceptionalism, it has to begin domestically rather than internationally. This is a great short essay by Arthur Schlesinger Jr., centrist liberal historian, called The Disuniting of America, in which he advocates for a sense of American identity based on that Latin motto, E pluribus unum, rather than the current fashionable trends of multiculturalism and diversity. So if there is a renewal of American exceptionalism, I think those three Latin words should be a good start.
Yeah, e pluribus unum. I think that's right. From any come one, I've been using the term patriotic pluralism as well. One of the things that strikes me, and I'm going to be writing about this and talking about this, is how so many people on the center left have sort of given up on their patriotism. One has, if you drive in any rural area, I was just in upper state New York, and you drive around and you see American flags everywhere. I was in Roscoe, New York, American flags every home. I spend a lot of time in West Virginia, hiking and fishing and so forth. American flags everywhere. I'm in my own neighborhood in Montgomery County, Maryland, a very blue area. I don't think they've elected a Republican elected official in decades. And you don't see very many American flags at all. I was just sort of taking note. And I think out of the dozens and dozens of houses I was going by, I saw one flag. And I think that I'm wondering if that's part of the project here. Recently, amid all the turmoil on universities, a group of fraternity brothers, I believe at University of North Carolina, took down the Palestinian flag from this pole and put up an American flag. And it was sort of this act of profound rebellion against the rebels in a way. And I think they crowdsourced their work, and they raised hundreds of thousands of dollars overnight. But a lot of us were cheering them on. I mean, whoever thought we would be cheering on a bunch of frat boys? But it seems to me that there's an opportunity here to reclaim that among center left liberals. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I will agree. The issue is that center left liberals, and of course who are more sympathetic to far left ideas than say center right ideas, they think of America the same ways as the far lefties think of America, as something that is systemically rotten from the beginning. So perhaps a renewal of patriotism would begin with a certain change of mind that the far left are not their friend. In fact, it's been the relationship historically. The center left liberals think the far left are their friends, but the far left despises them. The far left's main contention is not with the center right or even the far right. It's the center left liberals who are in some ways harboring and sheltering them.
Yes, I think that's a very keen insight. In some ways, the far left go after the center left more vigorously than they do the center or the right, in a way, because they see they're contesting the preeminence of the center left within the established institutions, and so that's why they set their sights on them rather than on the far right. In some ways, they ignore the right. They're not even fighting for the hearts and minds of the average American. They're fighting for dominance on the left, I think. Would you agree?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So, Chuong, look, I have to say that you're a breath of fresh air. I see big things in your future. You're already a formidable intellectual figure, and I think and an entrepreneur in the way that you're able to actually build a podcast and to have conversations at the highest level of people, and I can see you really being one of those figures like Coleman Hughes. I remember following his early career. He's only, I think, 28 now, and already I watched him emerge on the public scene as a huge the influential voice, and I think you could go that route too. It's really impressive to see how well read you are. And I also just want to say I thank you for your sort of intellectual moral courage. I know it couldn't have been easy, reading presenting that paper in class and having everybody walk out. I'm thankful that you have the confidence of your convictions to do what you did.
I'm a great fan of Coleman, and I'm glad to be mentioned in the same sentence as him. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, he should have you on his show. I'm going to recommend it.
That'd be great.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. And wishing you all a restful weekend. Until next time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, David.